Over the years, cheaper foreign goods have flooded the domestic market of many countries. While this is aimed at inducing competition and preventing monopoly, it has rather led to the shutdown of many companies in developing countries. As such, many people have been forced out of employment and have had their living standards reduced due to their company's inability to compete with foreign goods that flooded the market. And this was all possible due to free trade. Free trade is a policy that aims at removing all barriers in the form of punitive taxes and tariffs on goods. Thanks to free trade agreements, these barriers that exist in protectionism have been reduced. This encouraged trade between countries and led to competition. Popular examples of such agreements include North American Free Trade Agreement, now United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the European Union Free Trade Agreement, East Asia Free Trade Area, and the recent African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Such agreements are aimed at enhancing the free movement of labor between and among countries, promoting a unified market where consumers are connected to a variety of goods, and also to induce investment. Think of it as a world where commodities are made available to consumers at affordable prices. Everyone is connected and the economy grows together. Sounds great, right? And it has worked in some countries. However, it has also helped developed countries economically bully poor countries. This is because, in a game of no rules, as all barriers are removed, benefits are not guaranteed. Indeed, I side with Graham Dunkley that free trade cannot bring as many benefits as claimed and that benefits are contingent rather than certain. Some disadvantages of free trade include exploitation, job outsourcing, environmental degradation, poor working conditions, and dumping. Let us dive deeper into this game of no rules. Foremost, free trade has not always been fair. Trade agreements differ from country to country and union to union, resulting in exploitation of some countries by others. For instance, many Cameroon farmers had to resort from the plantation of onions to cassava because onions from Europe, especially Holland, had destroyed the market as it was no longer economical to cultivate them. However, even though the Cameroon government can protect these farmers by imposing tariffs on such imported goods, they could not because the recent agreement with the EU, dubbed the Economic Partnership Agreement, prohibits raising punitive taxes to some extent. Yet, the EU relied on protectionism during the industrialization of Europe back in the 1800s.
All industrialized countries, including Germany, were only able to grow into economic heavyweights because they initially threw up big barriers to foreign competition. But that fact is conveniently forgotten nowadays. Without protectionism, in other words, Germany never would have turned into the industrial powerhouse it later became. Back in the 19th century, the Iron Chancellor Otto von Bismarck closed borders to keep out imports of wood and grain from Russia. And Britain also protected itself by coming up with the Made in Germany label. At the time, it was meant to identify cheap, mass-produced knives. Only later did the description grow to have
EU still
positive
engage in
connotations.
protectionism where they are less competitive and tend to be more open where they are more competitive. For instance, Switzerland subsidized its firms and imposed higher tariffs on agricultural imports to protect the agricultural industries in the country. Then one may ask, why then do many African countries not have the right to increase punitive taxes on imported agricultural goods? And all this while, I've been talking about the exploitative nature of free trade due to unfair agreements. But the effects are equally terrible. For instance, thanks to free trade, the US now exports its diet to every corner of the world. Take Samoa. The traditional Samoan diet consists of coconut milk baked in taro leaves, fish in coconut cream, bread coated with coconut sauce, and the list goes on. Basically, coconut, bananas, seafood, and taro, which are healthy. They decided to export it to Samoa where food was scarce. At one point, the average Samoan was eating at least 44 pounds of turkey tails annually. The effect was that 1 in every 3 adults had diabetes, with an increase in adult obesity rising to 93% as of 2001. And when the Samoan government eventually banned the importation of turkey tails to the island community, American poultry firms were not happy with it. And so ideally, the WTO blocked Samoa's application to join the WTO until it agreed to remove the ban on turkey tails under the claim of supporting free trade. The Samoan government were like, we only wanted to go and protect our industries and citizens. But the WTO were like, calm down. You're making our citizens fat so that they can in turn make the economy fat. Here, the WTO was straight up acting like a fraternity. Moreover, free trade has led to the dumping of goods. Dumping is an intentional policy by firms and governments to export its goods to other countries at lower prices in the importing country's market than the exporter's domestic market. Even though it enables consumers in developing countries to have access to goods at affordable prices, it stifles the local economy and puts companies producing similar goods out of business. This leads to layoffs of labor. For instance, unsold clothes by fashion companies like H&M and Zara, among others, are dumped in developing countries. However, these clothes, if unsold in the developing countries, end up incinerated or in landfills. Ghana, for instance, has been penetrated by fast fashion brands like H&M, with over 40% of such imported clothes ending up in landfills. This has increased environmental pollution in the country and has had its toll on climate change. Free trade would have been good if it promotes the intended purpose of enhancing globalization and access to affordable products by consumers. However, even though protectionism results in higher prices of goods, it is the only way to protect local industries in a cheaper world. Food production in particular should be shielded from competition whether in developing countries or in industrialized ones. I'm not saying that free trade is not good, but that developing countries should be allowed to build their own economies first, become self-reliant before any such agreement could go on. This because free trade stifles local economies through competition from more developed nations and hinders self-sufficiency by developing countries.